Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Wales once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from a few different styles, but not as many as I would like actually. But the beer that we're having a look at is a style that I know they do very, very well, and I've not had this style from them in quite a wee while actually. So I have to say, I'm curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review we will head to the northeast of Wales, a little place called Mold, which is just kind of to the southwest of Liverpool in England as well actually, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Polly's Brewing Company, formerly known as Loca Polly of course. But this particular beer is called Largo. It comes in at 6.2% ABV, and this one is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, like I said earlier, curious to see how this one turns out, and it is quite nice to be able to review a couple of Welsh beers for you here on the channel. As I've explained in other Welsh reviews, it's a little bit difficult to get a hold of Welsh beer other than really Tiny Rebel and these guys. So if you do happen to know a good Welsh craft beer web shop, let me know about that in the comment section below, and hopefully we can review some things from other breweries down there as well. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. Nice to return to Polly's for a New England hazy IPA of course. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Polly's Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see some more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Welsh beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but not as often as I would like, as I said. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Polly's Brewing Company. So Polly's Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Mold in Flintshire in the very northeast of Wales, and the company is run by three friends. This is Aaron Fellows, Sean Weldon and Scott Nixon, and the company was founded in early 2018 originally as Loca Polly. But Sean had a brewery previous to this, which was called Black Brook Brewing, which ran for around 18 months, but he realised early on that he couldn't brew beers, the kind of beers that he wanted using cask conditioning, so he decided to dissolve the Black Brook brand and completely rebrand the brewery. But the idea for the name Loca Polly came in two parts. So Loca is from his brother James's graphic design project, which was called Loca Island, and Polly comes from the horse who used to live in the barn where the brewery is located these days. But Aaron had been running a restaurant and bar and had become known as the beer guy, and he used to buy in Sean's beer when he worked in a local wine and tapas bar, and he was approached later by Sean to come on in as the head of sales, and he deals a lot with the business side of the brewery while Sean concentrates on the brewing. Scott joined the brewery a little bit later on in August of 2018, having been a long-term friend, and he's also involved in the brewing side of the business as well. An interesting point though about the brewery came in early 2019 when they received a cease and desist letter from Loca, a Swedish soft drinks company who are part of Spendrup's Brewery, and you'll find their waters and lots of little things around Sweden, Pressbyrån and 7-Eleven, all this very recognisable brand over in Sweden. And it was at this point that they decided to change their name to Polly's Brewing Company, named now just after the horse these days. But at the moment these guys are focusing mainly on IPAs and pale ales, but they have been producing other styles sporadically as well. I've seen a couple of imperial stouts from them, and I'm pretty sure they do kind of fruity sours on a regular basis as well. But like I say, this brewery is mainly known for their New England hazy IPAs, and as of November 2021 they've produced in the region of around 420 different kinds of beer. So a very prolific brewery considering how long they've been around actually. That's more than one beer a week if memory is served me correctly. 1 or 2 different beer releases every week, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Polly's Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at the beer itself then. So yeah, this one I think could be quite nice. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is very distinctive. This, of course, is the Polly's Brewing Company symbol, but you'll always find this on the side of the cans as well, Polly's. And yeah, there you can see at the bottom of the can, Largo. And that was actually the reason that I bought this beer, in fact, was Largo. My dad used to go to Largo on his holidays when he was younger, so I thought this would be a nice one to buy and review and then share with him. It was back in the days, of course, before EasyJet and Ryanair and all this. Yeah, as I said earlier, this one is a 6.2% New England Hazy IPA. The hops in the beer are Citra, Galaxy, Mosaic, Simcoe and Talus. We've encountered all of these before. Citra, American hop, of course, 14% alpha acid, lovely big mangoes and kind of quite a zesty quality as well, lemony zest and things. Galaxy from Australia, again, 14% alpha acid. That gives you a big pungent passion fruit. Usually quite a little bit of mango and pineapple as well. Mosaic, 14% alpha acid, American, usually big kind of juicy tangerine notes from that, sometimes a little bit of blueberry as well. Simcoe, American, 12% alpha acid, that gives you, in a New England IPA, it's going to give you a lovely, soft, smooth, passion fruity character. And then Talus is probably the newest of all the hops that are in here, so I believe that comes in around 14 or 15% alpha acid as well. It is American, it's a daughter of Sabro, and it gives you a big kind of quite sharp pink grapefruity colour actually. So the hop profile in this beer is pretty damn impressive, in fact, and this one has oats, wheat and barley malt in its malt base, so it should be quite a nicely rounded beer, this one. It also said on the Untappd page that they put the wort boil a little bit, they put the filtering process, actually the mash, to a slightly higher temperature, which means they extracted more sugars out of the beer and it should be a little bit sweeter, so I'm curious to see how that comes across in the flavour of this beer, in fact. But as you can see, it's a plain silver top can on this one, and I believe I paid about £6 for this can, so that translates to roughly about 70, that would be about, you know, it translates to roughly, you know, about €7.25, something like that, so maybe about 72 Swedish krona, and for those of you watching over in the States and beyond, it's probably $8 for the can or something like that. So yeah, I just found this in a really little local shop actually a couple of days back, so well, no, actually, it's a bit longer than that because I reviewed the other one that I bought at the same time. So I bought this one a couple of weeks ago. It's been sitting in the fridge for a bit too long, perhaps. But yeah, 6.2% New England IPA, Largo. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what this one has in store for us. So let's do this. Let's go for it. So yeah, you can smell this already. It does smell very, very nice. Need to cam the pour a little bit, but there we go. We've got a good chunk of it still in the can, but we'll put that in a little bitty later on. But anyway, there we go. So as you can see with this one then, it's poured with a good finger and a half of a frothy, I would say that's a creamy coloured head, absolutely, but look at the level of froth in that. That's a perfect head almost. Let's look at that. Tiny, tiny little bubbles in there. That's what you want. But in terms of colour, this one is poured a lovely, quite bright and slightly pale yellow. If you shine the light through this, it's actually quite solid and very, very opaque. So that is pretty good. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. That determines the vast majority of your EBC rating. But the wort boil also plays a role too. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA like this is most likely going to have a wort boil of between 70 and 90 minutes. And any adjuncts that you put in, any barrel aging that you do will of course affect the colour too, but usually with these styles you don't have to care about those two particular variables. But what I'm going to say about the haze though is that it's pretty damn impressive for a 6.2%. I mean, look at that. If I put my hand behind the glass there, you can see this one is pretty damn opaque. So this is one of the hazier New England IPAs I've come across at 6.2% ABV. Now remember, the level of haze depends on the yeast. It also depends on the wheat content and the oat content. This can vary from brewery to brewery and even recipe to recipe, but this one is one of the hazier 6.2 New Englands that I've come across in recent times for sure. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, which is common, but yeah, a very small amount just going up towards the bottom of that head there. And you can see the head has settled down a little bit just to be a nice kind of foamy layer there, and that will fade away even further, I'm sure, going forward. But a lovely looking beer, this one. Nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of it, of course. I've got a feeling I'm going to sneeze in a minute, so I'm just being careful. But I think we can leave it at that for the appearance and have a little look at the aroma then. So let's do this, and hopefully I don't go into a sneezing fit when I have a smell of this beer, because if I sneeze once, I'm going to sneeze about 10 times. So annoying. But yeah, let's crack into the aroma of this beer then. Ooh, that does smell really nice. It still smells pretty fresh, I have to say. Yeah. What I'm going to say about this one, straight away, the impression that you're going to have of this beer is that it's a big, smooth, not so much creamy New England IPA, but a very big, smooth, bready, oaty New England IPA. As I've explained to you in other videos, I think there's 6 different directions you can take a New England IPA. They can be sort of farmhousey leaning and yeasty. They can be, they can be rye leaning and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be quite sweet and brown sugary leaning. And quite often they will display multiple of these, a number of these characteristics, I should say. But this one, it's very, very soft, it's very bready, and it's just got a nice juicy fruity character to it. So I do like how this one is going together actually. So let's kind of break down the aroma for you a little bit more in depth and just see how we go. So with this one then, I would say that the aroma, the malty backbone of this one, you definitely get a little bit of that nice kind of bread crusty backbone to the beer. There's a good little bit of white bread to this one for sure. You can smell that lovely kind of smooth white bready backbone to the beer. You can also smell the wheat just thickening out this beer a little bit, which I have to admit I very much like. But yeah, aroma wise, I think this one is pretty spot on actually. So it certainly has my approval, let's just say that in that sense. But yeah, a little bit of a bread crusty backbone. You can smell the smooth white bread from the barley malt. You can also smell the wheat just thickening it out. A little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, but you can also smell a nice kind of smooth and slightly dry oaty layer to this one. There's not, to be honest with you, this one does have a little degree of sweetness to it. You can certainly get a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity character, and you also get a nice kind of oaty creamy note out of this one. And the oats, in fairness, the oats actually do get a little bit drier the further into the nose that you go with this beer. But yeah, nice little kind of, as I say, a nice little bit of a sort of Werther's Original creaminess out of it, for sure. A little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch thing, and just a little bit of a McVitie's digestive character. But I would say this beer really does not lean towards the kind of sweeter end of the New England spectrum. It really comes across as more kind of soft and bready and a little bit oaty as well. But you're getting a little bit of the kind of dryness from the oats, and usually in the flavour and in the aroma you can pick that up if the New England IPA isn't at its freshest. But it's not usually a deal breaker with this particular style of beer. But for me, malty backbone comes across quite nicely, and it reminds me of some of the more old school New England IPAs that I've had at points in Sweden, such as the Stigberg, It's Amazing Haze, the O.O. Narangi, things like this. This comes across as like a more old school New England IPA, to be honest with you. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things, the green component then. Let's have a little look at this. So yeah, you do get a little hint of earthiness out of this one, but again, it's not too much. But yeah, nice little bit of earthiness in there. But the green component really leans toward, it really does lean toward a nice kind of big floral aromatic quality. So yeah, lovely big floral aromaticity coming out of this beer. I would say that the green component, it's got a little bit of a kind of pine needly dankness to it, which I do like, and it also has a little bit of a floral aromatic spice, but it's not madly pungent, if that makes sense. Just a little bit of earthiness underneath, a little bit of a herbal quality, then that nice kind of quite deep and slightly bigger floral aromaticity. But at the front of the nose, you've certainly got a nice kind of grassy sort of thing as well, actually. So I do like how that goes together in this particular beer. So yeah, I think, yeah, nice kind of zesty grassy character for me, but yeah, the green component really leans towards that kind of deeper slightly more dank floral aromaticity, and just a little bit of a pine resiny note in there. What you have to remember with New England IPAs though is that these rely mainly on late addition hops and also dry hopping. West Coast IPAs have those, but also have a little bit of early addition hop, or quite a bit of early addition hopping actually, and that is what gives you the big bitterness in the old school West Coast IPAs. The earlier in the wort boil you add the hops, the more likely you are to get bitterness out of them, and then later on you have a trade-off. You know, as you go through the wort boil, you've got a progressive trade-off from bitterness in favour of you know, flavour and aroma. So I do like how that side of things goes with beer as well. I've always found that really interesting. But yeah, New England IPAs, that's the reason why a lot of them have got kind of lower bitterness and things like that. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, there's quite a lot going on in this one. And when you consider the fact that there's 5 hops in the beer, that's not really surprising. But yeah, for me, there is quite a bit of a pungent passion fruit to this one. And I mean, when you've got Galaxy and Citra in this one kind of strutting their stuff, that would make sense. Simcoe as well is giving you a slightly softer passion fruit underneath, but you do also get quite a bit of sharpness. There is quite a sharper grapefruit in this one, because pink grapefruit is really quite bright compared to it's got a slightly different pungency to it than regular grapefruit in a sense. So the pink grapefruit in this one from the talus really comes out quite a bit as well. So you can smell that right away in this one. It's got a very bright, it's almost even kind of spicy and flowery in a sense. You've got this big kind of slightly spicy, flowery pink grapefruit sort of thing coming out of the beer. But behind that, of course, you've got a little bit more of a kind of pungent passion fruit from the Citra and the Galaxy. Then you can get the softer stuff from the Simcoe. You do have a few other tropical things going on. I mean, you have got a little bit of that typical juicier mango and softer apricot and things like that. I do actually get quite a bit of pineapple out of this one. You can smell that really nice soft pineapple character in this beer. For sure, the pineapple is actually quite pungent. But then underneath that, you do get the big kind of juicy tangerine notes from the Mosaic as well. I always find that interesting when Mosaic is only one of the hops, and how it can always just push its orangey characters, that sort of tangerine kind of aroma out. I'm always interested with that, how it can do it, but I really like that about this beer for sure. For me, I do get a little hint of like, you know, a slightly gooseberry note out of this as well, which is kind of interesting. And it's Citra, out of these ones, it's Citra that is most likely to kind of give you that. But yeah, for me, quite a lot. You can smell the pink grapefruit right away. Nice little bit of both quite pungent and more juicy passion fruit. Bit of mango, bit of apricot, and then that nice, and quite a bit of pineapple though. I'd say pineapple is quite pungent, and then a more sort of oily tangerine note coming out of the beer as well. So a little bit of everything coming out in this one, I have to say. So aroma wise, this does tick all the boxes for me as well. But let's put the rest of the beer into the glass there, and we'll have a taste of this then. So yeah, this one is the Largo, a 6.2% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Polly's Brewing Company in Mold in the northeast of Wales. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, or as they say in Welsh, Iechyd da. There we go. Yeah, it's pretty solid actually. Very, very smooth. First impression of this beer is that it's a very, very smooth hazy IPA, this one. That's really solidly done. It isn't at its freshest, but it still holds up really quite well, in fact. So yeah, happy enough with this one for sure. So yeah, I'm going to say, certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that one again. Now, the last beer that I had from these guys, of course, was the Disco Infiltrator, which was a West Coast IPA. And if I remember rightly, I thought the malt base in it was really well done, but I was a bit disappointed with the kind of hoppy side of the beer, because I felt it should have been a bit more bitter than it was. And I don't like using this New England IPA bitterness with West Coast IPAs, but this goes to show you what this brewery are really capable of. I love their New England IPAs, in my experience, have always been very, very good. And you've got some of the guys who are down that way, you know, like Peter the Clueless Drinker, Adam of Mersey Beers, and so on. These guys drink, and Rob Hobbsy as well, these guys all drink Polly's a bit more regularly than I do, and they rave about these guys. So yeah, this one I have to say I am pretty impressed with, and I can see where their plaudits come from when I try this. So yeah, this is definitely worth trying, and I would say if you come across some New England IPAs from this brewery and you haven't tried them, they are definitely worth looking at. So yeah, let's break down this beer properly and describe the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth then, as we always do. So, straight away with this beer then, across the middle of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of bread crusty kind of character there. I do wonder if there's a bit of lactose or dextrose or something in this beer. It doesn't say anything about that right enough, because the smoothness you get out of this one is really quite ridiculous, to be honest with you. I really like it. So I would have guessed there was a bit of dextrose or something like that in this one. But anyway, so across the middle of your palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of bread crusty backbone there. So middle third of your palate, back third of your palate, you've got all of that in there. Then you've got this lovely kind of smooth white bready character on top of it. That's the barley malt, of course. But then you can feel, if we focus on that middle third of your palate now, so you've got the bread crusty layer, the smooth white bread, and then you can feel the wheat sitting on top of that, just thickening it out a little bit. Then if you go down that middle line of your tongue, you can feel the oaty character in there. So it's got a lovely kind of smooth, creamy oaty character in there. And then as you move out toward the edge of your palate, you can of course feel there's a little bit of that more kind of powdery, dry, kind of oaty sort of thing to it as well. So I really like how that goes together for sure. Yeah, so the way that goes together, I think, is really nice. And I would stick to what I was saying from the aroma. This one definitely comes across as a more sort of old school kind of, 2015, 2016 era New England IPA. It's definitely one of the more kind of straight up bready ones, rather than being a lot sweeter than some of the other ones that you come across these days. So yeah, on top of that kind of oaty line down the middle of your palate, you do have a little circle in there, so you can feel there is a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original kind of butter candy, butterscotchy sweetness coming out of the beer. So I do like how that goes together in this one. But as you move out towards the edges of your palate, in that middle part of your tongue, you do get one or two little McVitie's digestive biscuity notes, but I would stress that those are very, very minimal. So a little bit of Werther's Original, a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. And other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the middle third of your palate. But yeah, this one is I think is really solidly done. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. Actually, I think the malty characteristics in this one are very nicely done. But let's look at the back third of your palate then. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of that bready build up there. Base of the back third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty, grainy sort of thing. On top of that, you get the nice smooth kind of barley malt qualities, and then, pardon me, you can feel that the wheaty layer of this beer is a little bit thicker, and you do get just a little bit of bitiness on the very back of your palate there as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together too. But sitting on top of all this wheaty layer, you can get the yeasty component of the beer. Now the yeast is very much, in this one, the yeasty character of the beer, I think, is very much like a sort of just like a wet white bread. Actually, it's got one or two little kind of crackery elements to it as well, and maybe just a little, almost like a kind of grainy, very slightly peppery, spicy kind of note. But that's very, very minimal. But the yeasty kind of wet white bready, crackery, slightly peppery sort of thing just sits on top of the wheaty layer there, and you can feel that at the back of your palate the flavour just feels a little bit taller, but as you come further forward it just condenses down a wee bit. Then the middle third of your palate, the flavours are a wee bit more squashed together and condensed, and that I think describes the malty and yeasty part of this beer. So yeah, I like how this one goes about its business for sure. But yeah, I guess, the one thing you always have to be aware of with this, when I use that description, I think the yeasty flavours do actually come quite a bit further forward in this beer as well. Yeast contributes a hell of a lot to the flavour of your beer, of course. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So, hoppy, the green component of the beer first. Let's do that. So yeah, for me, Back corners of your palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward, it's a little bit kind of herbal, of course, but then very quickly it becomes quite green and floral, and it's actually quite a wet floral aromaticity you get out of this beer. And this is one of the key differences, I would say, between the aroma and the flavour. This one actually comes across as having a little bit of a dank quality to it the further that you go. Into the or the more of the aroma that you smell, but it's actually just a nice kind of, it's actually just quite a bright floral aromaticity that you get with this. There's not really a spiciness to it. It's quite a bright, wet, kind of floral aromatic quality that you get out of this one. But around the front curve of your palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, and there's a wee bit of a kind of zestiness in there as well. But yeah, nice little bit of grassy zestiness, quite like a fresh, wet, freshly cut grass. That's what I was looking for. Wet, freshly cut grass kind of quality around the front edge of the palate there. That's what you're getting on the green component. But let's focus on the front third of the palate, and let's focus on that front third of your palate and the kind of fruity components of the beer then. I think we've covered everything that we need to say about the hoppy part of the beer. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, a little bit of a grainy sort of thing. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit smoother and more kind of white bready actually. So I do like how that goes together in this one. On top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And yeah, for me, I think it's pretty solid in that regard as well. Yeah, just a nice kind of smooth white bready backbone to the beer. But if you go toward the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a more kind of, you do feel a little bit of passion fruit coming out of this one. So yeah, I do like that about this. There is a wee bit of that kind of passion fruity quality there, but you can feel the sort of brightness of that. So the brighter side of the passion fruit, the more pungent side of the passion fruit, and the kind of pink grapefruit from the talus is really coming out in this one. And it does have just a little bit of a kind of florally spice to it, the kind of pink grapefruit sort of thing. So yeah, you do have quite a bit of that pungent tropical fruit at the back of that front third of your palate. But as you come further forward, it does mellow out a little bit. So galaxy, talus and citra are all kind of showing their colours at the back of the front third of your palate for sure. But yeah, moving further forward, yeah, moving a bit further forward on the palate there, you can feel the passion fruit mellows out a little bit. That's probably down to the Simcoe actually. And then underneath you will get one or two little hints of apricot, that dried apricot note there. I do get a wee bit of mango, and that's going to come from the citra as well actually. But it's actually quite a juicy fruity character you get from this one. There's not too much in the way of dried fruit in this beer for me. But then as you cross the border on the middle of that front third of your palate, as you go into the front third of your palate, I'm a bit the very front sixth of your tongue, I guess we could say. I'm a bit surprised because the mosaic isn't showing its head as much as I thought it was going to in this one. It actually, for me, you don't get too much of that oily tangerine character that I was picking up in the aroma. You actually get more of the kind of lemony, zesty sort of things, from which I would believe comes from the citra, but you get a wee bit more of the pineapple quality coming out of the beer for sure as well. And I do get a wee bit of that gooseberry sort of thing I was talking about the further I go into the aftertaste as well. So this beer is pretty interesting and quite different in a lot of ways from what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I think when you've got the liquid on your tongue, you will get a wee bit more of the kind of tangerine orange on the front edge of your palate, but it's mainly the tropical fruits that come out of this one for me. So yeah, I like how this one goes about its business for sure. So thumbs up to Polly's Brewing Company. I think this is a really solid New England IPA. I need to try like a double and a triple from these guys. I'm not sure if I've ever had. I've definitely not had a triple, and I don't think I've had a double IPA from them. So I'll need to keep my eyes open and see if I can find any of those from Polly's and just see how we go. But yeah, I think that's everything on the flavour. Let's round off this review with a look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer, it's mid to kind of top end of mid-bodied. I think that's fair to say. The carbonation is very smooth, and the beer overall is very, very smooth. But it does have a really nice, like I said, it does have a really nice little bit of a slightly oily slickness to it as well. So yeah, I think mouthfeel wise, this is really good. And yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then there's not a lot of bitterness to this beer at all. I think this one, we're probably talking about 20 IBUs or something like that. This one is quite a low bitterness beer for sure, so relying a lot on those late addition and dry hopping additions as well. But yeah, malty side of the beer is nice and smooth. There is a wee bit of graininess to it and a bit of breadiness as well. As I said earlier, there's not a lot of sweetness in this beer. It's not showing you really the sweeter side. It's not really showing you the sweeter side of itself actually. But on the on the green component, it's leaning towards that more floral, bright floral side of things, but quite wet in that sense. But yeah, nice, smooth, bready malt base for me. Then you've got a lovely, juicy, but quite bright, tropical, leaning fruity character. But one or two other wee things going on in there as well. You do get a little bit of a dried fruity character out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. But I think all I can really say to round up this one is that it's very, very solidly done. Quite an old school sort of 2015, 2016 era New England IPA for me. And yeah, it really shows you what Polly's can do in this this particular style bracket. So yeah, a big thumbs up to them for this beer. I really enjoyed this one actually. It's one, it kind of grew on me even more as I drank more and more of it. But yeah, I think we can leave it there. So yeah, this one was the Largo, a 6.2% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Polly's Brewing Company in Mold in Flintshire in the northeast of Wales. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Polly's Brewing Company as well, and I do hope that we can return to these guys at some point fairly soon. But it'd be nice to have a look at a West Coast IPA and a New England IPA when I've been home this time, and hopefully we can get a few more Welsh beers on the channel as well. But Slange just now, check out my social media, check out Polly's Brewing Company social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slange, skull, and cheers.